In a small town tucked between two quiet highways and forgotten train tracks, there stood a little cafe with peeling green paint and a bell that jingled each time the door opened. The kind of place where the coffee is always lukewarm, the booths always creak, and the same faces sit in the same seats every morning. Folks came here more for the routine than the food and for the comfort of hearing their own voices over bacon and eggs. Her name was Emily. She worked the early shift, always in before the sun, moving with a kind of tired grace that comes from long weeks and quiet disappointments. She never said much beyond cream or sugar, and never lingered at any table longer than she had to. Her dark hair was always tied back, her eyes fixed on the floor, and her uniform sleeves always tugged down to the wrist 7 in the heat of summer. But it wasn't her silence that folks talked about, it was the scars. One ran across her cheek, thin and pale like it had been there for years. Another peeked out from behind her collar when she bent forward to clear a plate. People whispered theories, fights, accidents, jail time. No one knew for sure, but that didn't stop the judgment. In this town, the truth never mattered as much as the story people chose to believe. No one asked where she came from. No one cared to know why she walked with a slight limp. Until one morning, when an old man with a cane and a steady gaze walked through that door and saw something no one else had, something they all missed, something he remembered. Emily began each day before the town ever woke up. Rain or shine, she arrived at Corner Brew Café by 4:30 a.m. before the coffee pots were turned on, before the first church bell rang. She swept the floors, wiped the tables, set out packets of sugar and cream, everything done in silence. The little cafe wasn't anything fancy, but for the people of Cedar Hill, it was where life slowed down. The old security guard came every morning for his muffin. The retired school principal always ordered unsweetened peppermint tea, and near the window, the same group of loud young men gathered daily, talking too loudly, laughing too often. Emily moved among them like a shadow, leaving no sound, offering no greetings. Every day was the same, and every day, the whispers followed. Her look at her face. I heard she did time in prison. She's hiding something, that's for sure. Emily never replied, never reacted. She simply tugged her sleeves down a bit farther and kept working. But the words clung to her like a fog she couldn't shake. Every step on the creaky wooden floor felt a little heavier. Emily never spoke of her past, and no one in town cared to ask. To them, she was just the girl with the scars, nothing more. Customers came in, ate, paid, and left. No one wondered why her wrist trembled now and then, or why she froze every time a loud engine roared outside. That Tuesday morning, the same group of young men sat at their usual window table. 4 guys, barely in their 20s, hair slicked with gel, tight t-shirts, spotless sneakers. They joked about everything from the smell of the salmon quiche to the way an elderly lady walked. But Emily was their favorite target. Hey, check it out, long sleeves again. Probably hiding those prison tats. One snickered, chewing gum noisily. Bet she was in some jail fight. Her face says it all. Another added with a crooked grin. She's totally a junkie. You can tell, the third one said, pretending to shrink in fear as Emily walked by. Their laughter rang out loud and hollow. Everyone nearby heard it, but no one spoke up. They all pretended not to notice. As for Emily, she stayed silent as always, clearing mugs and wiping tables without lifting her eyes. But one person noticed, Harold Whitmore Savanier, retired U.S. Army sergeant, 3 tours in Afghanistan, alone in the corner booth. He hadn't missed a word. From the cruel jokes to the way Emily's shoulders hunched just a little more than usual, every detail was caught in his seasoned gaze. He knew that look. He'd seen it in soldiers fresh off the battlefield, silent, guarded, wounded in ways no X-ray could show. He noticed the subtle flinch in Emily's spine whenever someone laughed behind her, the way she avoided contact not out of rudeness, but survival. Then it happened. Emily bent down to pick up a spoon, dropped near table for a simple motion, but her sleeve slipped up just a bit, for just a second, and it was enough. A patch. Faded fabric, dulled by wash and wear. But the symbol was unmistakable. Twin towers and a downward dagger. The combat patch of the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team. Harold froze. That wasn't something just anyone wore. It wasn't a fashion statement or an imitation. It was real, and it belonged to someone who had been there. And that unit? It was his unit. He pressed one hand to his cane and slowly stood. Pain shot through his knee, but he didn't care. Every ounce of focus was now on the quiet girl working the floor. He moved toward her. The group of young men burst into laughter, again as Emily turned away, unaware of Harold's slow approach. Look, she's eavesdropping and running off. One of them called, nearly choking on his laughter. But this time, the laughter stopped cold when Harold spoke, his voice low, but commanding. That's enough. The cafe fell silent. Emily froze. She turned around, and for the first time, her eyes met Harold's. Did you serve? He asked her, calm and direct. She hesitated, just briefly, then nodded. 173rd Airborne, he continued, nodding toward her arm. She looked down, gently pulling her sleeve up, her eyes lowered. Another nod. Kandahar. 2014. Harold took a deep breath. The room held it with him. Then he stood straight and raised his hand in a crisp, respectful salute, every angle perfect. A soldier's salute. One veteran to another. "Thank you for your service," he said. Emily stood still. For the first time since arriving in Cedar Hill, she wasn't looking at the floor, and the group of young men, they didn't say another word. Harold stood upright, one hand resting on his cane, eyes fixed on the young woman. Before him, the cafe went completely silent. The clink of spoons, the hum of the coffee machine, even the wind brushing against the window pane all seemed to vanish. Emily stood still, her hands gripping the hem of her apron, uncertain what was happening. Harold looked her in the eyes, his voice calm but firm. "Did you serve?" She gave a small nod and whispered, "Yes, Afghanistan." He asked again, gently narrowing his gaze. Emily nodded more slowly this time. "Kandahar, 173rd. The moment he heard that, something stirred deep inside Harold. That name wasn't unfamiliar. He had been there. Same unit, same battleground. The endless nights on watch, rockets screaming overhead, friends sharing a cigarette in the dark gone by morning, with only their boots left behind. Now, in front of him stood a survivor, not just a waitress, not just the quiet girl people gossiped about, a soldier. Harold straightened his back, though age and war had curved it over the years. But in that moment, he stood like the soldier he once was on parade ground, in full dressin', raised his hand in salute, a formal, full, slow, and deeply respectful salute. No one in the cafe laughed anymore. The group of young men who had mocked her moments before sat frozen. One of them, the one with the fake gold watch, turned away, pretending to scroll through his phone. The loudest of them chewed his sandwich, more quietly now, unsure where to look. A third gripped his soda can so tightly, his knuckles turned white, and the youngest among them stared at Harold with a changing expression, one that shifted from defiance to shame. Harold never broke eye contact with Emily. "She's braver than any of you combined," he said firmly, each word deliberate. There was a pause. Then, slowly, the youngest man stood up. He walked toward Emily, awkwardly, almost sheepishly. I'm sorry," he murmured. "I didn't know." Emily said nothing, but she nodded softly. Not quite forgiveness, but something close, a quiet acceptance. She wasn't looking down anymore. Her back was straight, her eyes lifted, her lips pressed together, holding something behind them, maybe sorrow, maybe pride, or maybe just peace. The other patrons began to rise from their chairs too. No one spoke, but several nodded respectfully toward Harold as he turned and returned to his seat. From his usual corner booth, his eyes met Emily's. Agina, silent recognition passed between them. Later that morning, Emily brought out his usual apple pie. But for the first time, Harold noticed she placed a second fork on the plate. "There's an empty seat," she said quietly, then sat across from him. No one in the cafe seemed surprised. No one questioned it. From that day on, things began to change. The whispers stopped. In their place came nods of greeting, gentle questions like, "Where did you serve?" followed by a willingness to truly listen. Emily began receiving more generous tips. Customers called her by name instead of Miss or Hey You. One brought her a book about notable women in combat. An older woman gave her a hand-stitched cloth napkin with embroidered words, "You are seen. You are respected." As for the group of young men, they didn't stop coming to the cafe. But now when Emily passed by their table, they sat quietly. Some nodded respectfully. The youngest among them, the one who had apologized, started leaving. A tip each morning. On some days, he even offered to help stack chairs after closing time. And every Tuesday morning, right at 8:15, Harold would be there seated at the back booth. And there would always be 2 slices of apple pie. One for him, one for the woman marked by war now, his friend, his fellow soldier, and a part of a community that had finally begun to see her for who she truly was. They didn't speak much, but they shared silence, memory, and the quiet kind of respect that needed no words. And sometimes, that's all a soldier ever needs. We walk past heroes every day without ever knowing it. Some wear uniforms, others wear a simple apron behind a cafe counter. Emily never asked for attention. She just needed to be seen for who she truly was. A woman with a past, quiet courage, and a strength few understood. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like to help kindness spread. Share it with someone who may have lost faith in goodness. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more true stories, quiet, powerful, and worth hearing at least once in a lifetime.